For decades, one of the most photographed, most studied, most obsessively watched star systems in the entire galaxy was hiding something in plain sight, and nobody noticed, not until a telescope built to look at something else completely stumbled onto it by accident. This is the story of Beta Pictoris d, a giant hidden planet that scientists somehow missed. For years, right inside a system they thought they already understood completely. To understand why this discovery is such a big deal, you first need to understand just how famous this star system already was. Beta Pictoris sits about 63 light years from Earth, which in cosmic terms basically makes it our next door neighbor. It is a young star, only around 23 million years old, which sounds ancient, but is actually practically a newborn compared to our own sun. Because it is so young, Beta Pictoris is still surrounded by a massive disk of dust and debris, leftover material from the same process that formed its planets in the first place. Astronomers have been staring at this system for decades because it offers something incredibly rare. It lets scientists watch in real time how planets and their surrounding debris interact while the solar system is still actively forming and settling down. This is not some untouched patch of empty sky. This is one of the single most intensely studied planetary systems in the entire Milky Way. Think about how strange that really is. There are billions of stars scattered across our galaxy, and the overwhelming majority of them have never once been examined closely by any telescope on Earth. Beta Pictoris is different. It has been photographed, mapped, and analyzed by nearly every major observatory humans have ever built, from ground-based telescopes to Hubble to now Webb. If any system in the galaxy should have already given up all of its secrets by now, logic says it should have been this one. Beta Pictoris was already known to host two giant planets. The first, called Beta Pictoris b, made history years ago as one of the very first exoplanets ever directly imaged by any telescope on Earth. Its sibling, Beta Pictoris c, was found later, orbiting closer to the star. Two confirmed giant worlds, endlessly photographed, endlessly modeled, endlessly discussed in astronomy papers for years. And yet, this entire time, a third giant planet was sitting there too, completely unnoticed, hiding in the exact same system everyone had already been staring at for years. Here's the part that makes this story genuinely wild. Astronomers were not even looking for a new planet when they found it. The James Webb Space Telescope was pointed at Beta Pictoris to study the atmosphere of the planet they already knew about, Beta Pictoris b, using an instrument called NIRSpec, short for near-infrared spectrograph, combined with something called an integral field unit. The team was essentially trying to capture both an image and a detailed light spectrum from every single pixel in that image at once. While digging through that data, something strange showed up exactly where it wasn't supposed to be. The lead researcher on this discovery, Aidan Gibbs, described the moment perfectly. The team wasn't hunting for anything new. They were simply trying to understand a planet they already knew existed. And then, buried inside the data, a telltale signal appeared exactly where nobody expected to find one. That signal wasn't a bright dot or an obvious photograph of a planet. Instead, it was a distinctive pattern hidden inside the light itself, a series of peaks and dips researchers call an absorption pattern, and almost like a barcode printed across the spectrum of light coming from that region of space. This particular pattern matched carbon monoxide, a chemical fingerprint commonly found inside the atmospheres of giant gas planets. Now, spotting a strange pattern in your data is one thing. Proving it's an actual planet and not some kind of instrument glitch or a random background object is a completely different challenge. Because spectroscopy doesn't just reveal chemistry, it also reveals motion. The research team was able to calculate this object's speed, its position, and its alignment relative to the star's massive debris disk, every single measurement lined up perfectly with something genuinely orbiting Beta Pictoris, rather than some unrelated object drifting by in the background. Unexpected bright blob sitting right there in the imaging data. But after years of experience working with this kind of telescope data, scientists have learned the hard way not to automatically trust random bright blobs. Sometimes they're real, sometimes they're just weird structures in the swirling dust disk, or even glitches in the instrument itself. The only way to know for sure was to grab a full light spectrum at exactly the same time as the image, and that spectrum sealed the deal almost instantly. To make absolutely sure this wasn't some kind of fluke, the team requested additional follow-up observations using Webb's other major instrument, MIRI, the mid-infrared instrument. Those follow-up scans detected water vapor and methane in the same location, additional chemical evidence that confirmed beyond reasonable doubt that this was a real planet with a real atmosphere, not some strange trick of light or dust. A completely separate team working telescope along with Webb's NIRCam instrument confirmed the exact same discovery on their own. Two different teams, using different instruments and different methods, both landed on the same conclusion at almost the same time. So what exactly is this newly discovered world? Scientists estimate Beta Pictoris d is at least twice the mass of Jupiter, which sounds enormous until you realize it's actually the smallest of the 3 known giant planets in this particular system. Its orbit sits roughly 30 astronomical units from its star, a distance comparable to where Neptune sits in our own solar system. That makes it the widest orbit of the 3 known planets here, drifting just inside the inner edge of that famous swirling debris disk. Which brings us to the most important question of all. If this planet is genuinely enormous, genuinely bright, and orbiting a star that astronomers have been photographing obsessively for literal decades, how on earth did everyone miss it for so long? The answer comes down to one simple, frustrating obstacle: cosmic fog. Beta Pictoris happens to sit inside one of the brightest, densest debris disks known anywhere in the galaxy. That disk acts almost exactly like fog rolling across a photograph, scattering starlight in every direction and making it incredibly difficult for traditional imaging telescopes to tell the difference between an actual planet and just another clump of glowing dust. For years, this planet was likely sitting right there in earlier photographs, disguised as nothing more than background haze. This is exactly why the new spectroscopic method used by Webb's team turned out to be such a breakthrough. Instead of relying purely on capturing a clear photograph, which is nearly impossible through that much dust, researchers essentially ignored the visual fog entirely and searched instead for narrow, very specific chemical signatures unique to planetary atmospheres. Even when a planet is completely hidden behind a wall of glowing dust, its atmospheric chemistry still leaves behind clues that ordinary imaging simply cannot pick up. Scientists now believe this same hidden planet might finally explain some other long-standing mysteries about the Beta Pictoris system too. Researchers had already noticed that this famous debris disk has an unusually sharp, well-defined inner edge, along with a few other strange structural quirks that never fully made sense before. Interestingly, astronomers had actually predicted, years in advance, that a planet roughly like this one probably had to exist, simply based on how the disk itself was behaving. Now they finally have direct evidence confirming that prediction. If you're enjoying learning about discoveries like this, go ahead and hit the like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel keep making videos like this one. Beyond simply adding a third planet to an already famous system, this discovery represents something much bigger for the entire field of exoplanet science. Beta Pictoris d is now recognized as the very first directly imaged planet ever discovered, primarily through moderate resolution spectroscopy rather than through traditional direct imaging techniques. That distinction might sound technical, but its implications are enormous. For years, the standard method for finding planets like this one has revolved around blocking out a star's overwhelming light and then simply photographing whatever faint points of light remain nearby. That method works reasonably well in cleaner, less cluttered systems, but it completely falls apart in messy, dust-filled environments like Beta Pictoris, exactly the kind of environment where planets are still actively forming and where some of the most interesting science is happening. By proving that spectroscopy alone can successfully hunt down and confirm a hidden planet, even when buried inside one of the dustiest, most chaotic environments known, this discovery opens up an entirely new toolkit for astronomers everywhere. Suddenly, previously unsearchable regions of space, ones packed with too much dust and debris for traditional imaging to ever work reliably, become genuinely viable places to search for hidden worlds. As one of the researchers put it, a single spectrum contains an incredible amount of information packed into it. You don't just confirm that something is a planet. You immediately start learning about its temperature, its chemical makeup, and exactly how it's moving through space, all from that one observation. That's a huge advantage over traditional imaging, where a single photograph might only give you a bright dot and nothing else, leaving researchers to wait years for enough follow-up data to learn anything meaningful. This also means that other famous, heavily studied systems out there, ones astronomers assumed had already been fully mapped out, might be hiding similar surprises. Any star system surrounded by a thick, glowing disk of dust could theoretically be concealing an entire planet or two, patiently waiting for someone to finally apply the same spectroscopic approach instead of relying purely on traditional photography. There is also something deeply reassuring and honestly a little humbling about this entire story. Beta Pictoris is not some obscure, rarely observed star system sitting quietly in a forgotten corner of the sky. It is one of the most heavily photographed, most intensely researched planetary systems that professional astronomers have ever studied. Telescopes have been pointed directly at it for literal decades, and despite all of that concentrated attention, an entire giant planet, at least twice the mass of Jupiter, remained completely invisible the entire time, patiently hiding within data that scientists had already collected and analyzed again and again. It's a powerful reminder that even our most familiar corners of the universe can still be hiding enormous secrets, simply waiting for the right instrument or the right method, or sometimes even the right accident, to finally reveal them. Researchers aren't finished with Beta Pictoris D either. The team plans to continue analyzing existing Webb observations to nail down the planet's precise temperature, its full atmospheric composition, and the exact details of its orbit. Every new observation promises to reveal even more about one of the most iconic, most closely watched planetary systems in modern astronomy. And somewhere out there, right now, this newly revealed giant world continues quietly orbiting its young star, exactly as it has for millions of years, completely unaware that it just rewrote a small but meaningful piece of what we thought we already knew about outer space. A world that dwarfs Jupiter, patiently circling its sun long before humans even existed, only just now stepping out from behind a curtain of cosmic dust to introduce itself. If this story genuinely surprised you, imagine how many other hidden worlds might still be sitting undiscovered inside data we've already collected, simply waiting for someone to finally notice the signal hiding in plain sight. Make sure you're subscribed, because stories, exactly like this one, keep showing up faster than you'd expect. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.